Welcome to the 36th lecture of cryogenic engineering under the NPTEL program. We have covered various topics till now and they are as follows. And the last we finished was cryogenic insulations under cryogenic engineering. So, now the current topic which we are going to talk about is vacuum technology. A brief has already been mentioned about vacuum technology in the earlier lecture regarding cryogenic insulation. However, vacuum is a very important technology and it will be used everywhere in cryogenic engineering, and therefore, it is very important to understand what is this vacuum about, and if I want to get good vacuum, what is a good vacuum practice, what are different vacuum pumps that could be used and things like that. What is most important to understand is what are vacuum fundamentals. So, under this topic, we will understand what is the need of vacuum in cryogenics, although it is little bit clear in the earlier topic when we covered cryogenic insulation. We will know what are vacuum fundamentals, very basic knowledge to understand how can good vacuum be obtained, what are different technologies, what are different nomenclatures that are used to get good vacuum. Then what is conductance and electrical analogy applied to vacuum technology. Pumping speed, we use various pumps, how do we get different pumping speeds and what are pump down times for respective pumps. And then we will talk about in brief about some vacuum pumps that are normally used. This topic will be covered in around 3 lectures and we will have some tutorial and assignments at the end of in various topics at various points in time. So, in today's lecture, we will understand what is the need of vacuum in cryogenics, some basics of vacuum that under vacuum fundamentals, and conductance and electrical analogy to understand what is this conductance business that is prevalently used in vacuum technology used in cryogenics. We know that the net heat inlet into a cryogenic vessel is due to various modes of mechanism of heat transfer. So, I can write Q net, the net heat inlet in a cryogenic vessel will be because of Q gas conduction, Q gas convection, Q solid conduction and Q radiation. This is also we have seen in cryogenic insulation. And if I produce good vacuum, the gas component can be completely ruled out. It will not be present over there. It will not be equal to 0, but we can say that the amount of gas available in a particular space would be negligible, or we can neglect Q gas conduction, and therefore, we can also neglect Q convection, which is going to be caused presence of gas in that particular space. So, if I got a good vacuum, the first two Q, I can say that Q gas conduction and Q convection can be completely taken care of, or they will get minimized. All right. So, gas conduction and convection are minimized. The losses occurring because of this, or heat inlet occurring because of gas convection and conductions are minimized by having vacuum between two surfaces of different temperatures. So, if I have good vacuum, the first two losses or heat inlets can be completely taken care of if I got good vacuum. Second thing, we also know that use of evacuated or opacified powder, which basically uses vacuum over there, it will decrease Ka, apparent thermal conductivity. And we also know that multilayer insulation, which takes care of solid conduction as well as Q radiation. Solid conduction is taken care by different aspects, having very small size perlite powder or having spacers. We know that optimum number of MLIs could be used, so that Q solid conduction also could be minimized. So, MLI can definitely reduce Q radiations, also it will minimize Q solid conduction. And we know that all these powders and also multilayer insulation work only when good vacuum is there. So, that means that all these modes of heat transfer which bring about heat inlet into the system can be taken care of if we are having very good vacuum. So, vacuum technology forms a very important aspect in cryogenics. We have just seen that all these modes of heat transfer gets minimized when we have a very good vacuum, and therefore, vacuum becomes an integral part of cryogenic engineering or a very important technology to be used always with cryogenics. So, what do we mean by vacuum? The word vacuum comes from Latin roots. It means empty or the void. So, actually nothing. A perfect vacuum can be defined as a space with no particles of any state. So, no presence of solid, liquid, gas particles in a space. If that is so, then we will say it is perfect vacuum. It is important to note that the above definition is a theoretical understanding. We can't have a perfect vacuum, and therefore practically it is impossible to achieve perfect vacuum. You can have a very low pressure, very low pressure, but you cannot get perfect vacuum. That means nothing is present over there, no particles are present over there. This is something which is very idealistic situation, and therefore practically it is impossible to achieve perfect vacuum. The pressures in vacuum are lower than atmospheric pressures, that is why we call it vacuum. The degree of vacuum is decided by the mean free path. We have touched upon lambda mean free path in the earlier lecture also, and depending on the value of this mean free path, we have got different degrees of vacuum. And before that, let us understand what is this mean free path, although it has already been touched upon in cryogenic insulation. So, what is mean free path? Mean free path is defined as the average distance travelled by the molecules between the subsequent collisions. That means, from one collision to second collision, whatever path it travels, whatever distance it travels, it is called as mean free path. And as you know that, as you go on reducing the pressure, the number of molecules will be getting reduced, and therefore, the path will increase. The path between two collisions will start increasing, and as the pressure gets lowered down to a very low level, their molecular collisions may stop and the molecule may hit the walls directly. In that case, that is the maximum mean free path possible in that case. So, lambda is given by, a mean free path is given by this particular expression, lambda is equal to mu by p into pi RT by 0.2 to the power 0.5, where mu is the viscosity of the gas, P is the pressure of the gas, and T is the temperature of the gas. So, there are different parameters, and one can calculate the value of lambda or mean free path accordingly, and R is a specific gas constant. So, for every gas now we can calculate the value of lambda. Also, we understand from this that lambda increases with decrease in pressure. So, as the pressure gets reduced, the value of lambda increases. That means, the distance between two collisions or the path starts increasing between the two collisions, which is understandable, because as the pressure gets reduced down, the number of particles will get reduced. So, the number of collisions also will get reduced, and molecule to molecule collision will take more path to be achieved by one molecule. So, as the pressure gets reduced, the value of lambda increases. It also increases with increase in temperature, that can be understood from this, because temperature happens to be in the numerator. The value of mean free path plays an important role in deciding the flow regimes in vacuum. So, this lambda is a very important characteristic or very important parameter which decides what is these different flow regimes in vacuum. Similar to the fact that we have got different flow regimes in continuum region, we have got different flow regimes in vacuum also. So, let us see what is this flow regime. Consider a closed system as shown in the figure, and there are different molecules. Let us say at high pressure, that means in compared to atmospheric pressures, we have got different molecules cramped together in a given space or given volume. But as you go down lowering the pressure, the number of molecules will get reduced, and you may land up in a situation like this, where the number of molecules are reduced as the pressure is reduced, and the residual molecules are now pulled apart. That means, the distance between the two molecules will start increasing, and therefore, we say that here the molecules will have collisions at will. I mean, the time they move, the time they start having movement, they will have a collision over here, while here it is a probabilistic model. Depending on what direction the molecules move, it will have a collision, and therefore, we say here the length between the two collision or the lambda value, the mean free path in this case will be more as compared to what it is over here, and that is obvious from here. As a result, mean free path of residual molecules becomes larger than the dimension of the system. So, sometimes this mean free path will become more than the dimension of the, if it travels over here, it will possibly never collide with any other molecule. In that case, the mean free path may be more than the diameter, which is the characteristic dimensions of this particular enclosure, and mean free path may be more than this, or it will be comparable to that. In such system, molecules collide only with the walls of the container, and they will never collide with the molecules themselves. So, molecule to molecule collision will be rare as the pressure goes down or as we go down to lower pressures. Such a flow of fluid is called free molecular flow. So, now we are talking about having a free molecular zone over here, and this is where vacuum would come into picture basically, because normally we will deal with such flows in vacuum. If lambda is much smaller than the characteristic length, such flows are called continuum flow. If lambda is very, very small, that means the length between the collisions or the time between the collisions is very, very small, or as soon as the molecule starts moving, it collides with other molecules. So, in this case, lambda is going to be very small, and this will not normally happen in continuum flow, which is what normally we will deal above atmospheric pressures. In fluid mechanics, Reynolds number is used to categorize the pipe flow regime as shown in the figure. So, we got a normally we deal with Reynolds number in continuum flow, and we know that the Reynolds number is between 0 to 2300, 2300, what we call the flow is laminar, while if the Reynolds number is between 2300 and 4000, we say that the flow is transition flow, while above 4000 we say the flow is turbulent flow, and this is very much known to all of you. In these flows, molecules collide with each other as well as with physical boundaries, if any. That means the molecules are in constant collision conditions, they are constantly colliding with each other, and they also may collide with the walls or the physical boundaries of this pipe. Now, such thing may not exist at low pressures. All right. So, in this case, pressures are in the range of atmospheric values, while if we go to the vacuum now, we got a different flow regime now, and we do not have Reynolds number over in vacuum now. What we have now here is called Knudsen number, normally written as NKN, is used to categorize the flow regimes in vacuum. So, here we always deal with a different number and not Reynolds number, and the moment we specify Knudsen number, we know that we are talking about flow regimes in vacuum now. And what is this Knudsen number now? This concept is analogous to Reynolds number in fluid mechanics, and the Knudsen number NKN is given as Nkn is equal to lambda by d, where lambda is mean free path and d is the characteristic diameter or dimension. So, if you know that as we have lower and lower pressure, the value of lambda will go on increasing. That means the Knudsen number will go on increasing as we have got better and better and better vacuum. And according to the value of this Knudsen number now, we will have different flow regimes in vacuum. So, I will have different Knudsen number now. So, based on the Knudsen number Nkn, the above figure characterizes the flow regimes in vacuum. So, when I say my Knudsen number is less than 0.01, I will say I am in continuum region, that lambda is much smaller than d in this case. But as lambda starts increasing, Knudsen number starts increasing. So, if I am between 0.01 to 0.3, I have something called as mixed flow over here. So, my lambda is now increasing because the pressure is decreasing, and if my Knudsen number is between 0.01 to 0.3, I will have something called as mixed flow, and if my Knudsen number is more than 0.3, that means lambda is 0.3 times dimension of the characteristic dimension, I am in something called as free molecular region. So, my molecules are in a free molecular flow region here, they are in the mixed flow regime in this case when the when the Knudsen number is between 0.01 and 0.3, and if the Knudsen number is less than 0.01, I am actually calling I am still in continuum region. Here the lambda value is going to be very, very small as compared to the dimensions or the characteristic dimension of the container. Summarizingly, we will say that we have got a continuum flow for Knudsen number less than 0.01, mixed flow between Knudsen number having between 0.01 and 0.3, and free molecular flow for Knudsen number greater than 0.3. The lambda value will go on increasing, Knudsen number will go on increasing, and I will reach to a free molecular regime when the Knudsen number is more than 0.3. So, let us call now, because as we go on lowering the pressures, we normally would call the pressures by different unit in this case. So, let us understand what are normal units of pressure, and then we will define how do we refer to different